What if the third eye isn't just a symbol, but a literal doorway between worlds? What if, hidden inside your brain, there is a sacred organ capable of connecting you to realities beyond the physical, an antenna to the divine that ancient civilizations tried to keep alive and modern society tried to silence? For centuries, the pineal gland has been dismissed as a biological leftover, a small, irrelevant gland buried deep in the center of the brain. Yet from the temples of Egypt to the mystics of India and the writings of early Gnostics, it was known as something far greater, the seat of the soul, the bridge between matter and spirit, the eye that sees beyond illusion. But if this is true, who closed that eye? Why has every culture that once revered this inner light eventually turned away from it? And why did the church, science, and modern systems of control all work, knowingly or not, to keep humanity's third eye asleep? In this video, we'll uncover how ancient mystery schools, Gnostic texts, and hidden teachings all point to one shocking truth. The pineal gland was designed to connect the human soul to higher dimensions of consciousness, and the moment it was silenced, humanity forgot who we truly are. We'll reveal how this door between worlds works, why it was sealed, and what happens when it begins to open again. Because awakening the pineal gland isn't about mystical fantasy. It's about remembering the part of yourself that was never trapped in this material world. So stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover may change forever how you see reality and yourself. If you've ever felt that there's more to existence than what your eyes can see, that your dreams or intuitions are fragments of another world trying to reach you, subscribe now and join this journey of hidden revelations. Together, we'll reopen the gate that was closed long ago. Long before science gave it a name, ancient civilizations already knew of a hidden eye within the human head, an organ of light, perception, and divine vision. The Egyptians carved it into the walls of their temples as the Eye of Horus, symbol of protection and awakening. The Hindus called it the Ajna chakra, the sixth energy center, glowing like an inner sun between the brows. To the Greeks, it was the seat of thought, and to the early Gnostics, it was the eye of the heart, the organ through which the soul remembered its origin in the realm of light. All these cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, spoke of the same thing, a door between worlds, hidden in the center of the human being. They taught that when the pineal gland awakens, the soul no longer sees with the eyes of flesh, but with the eyes of spirit. It perceives energy, truth, and presence beyond form, what the Gnostics called the pleroma, the fullness of divine reality that exists beyond the illusion of matter. Ancient priests knew how to keep this eye alive. They used sunlight, sacred fasting, rhythmic breath, sound vibration, and purity of intention to maintain the pineal's crystalline structure, its ability to receive and project the frequencies of higher dimensions. Egyptian initiates stood between columns aligned with the rising sun to synchronize their inner rhythm with the cosmos. Yogic adepts meditated for years to turn the third eye inward until it revealed the infinite light that resides within all beings. But then, something changed. The inner science of the soul was replaced by external religion. The mystery schools were silenced, their symbols rebranded as superstition. The church taught that enlightenment came only through its sacraments, not through inner discovery. The pineal gland, once seen as the holy lamp of consciousness, was forgotten, yet the symbols remained, hidden in plain sight. Look at the Vatican's courtyard, and you will see a massive bronze pine cone, a monument that has puzzled historians for centuries. Why is the symbol of the pineal gland displayed at the heart of the Catholic world? Some researchers believe it is a silent acknowledgement of an ancient truth the institution once absorbed, but never explained. In the Gnostic tradition, the pineal gland represented the lost connection between the human soul and the divine source. The demiurge, the false creator of the material world, veiled humanity's vision so that people would no longer perceive the light beyond the physical. By darkening the inner eye, he ensured that humankind remained attached to illusion, seeing only the shadows of reality, not its essence. That blindness is what the Gnostics called forgetfulness, the state of spiritual amnesia. That keeps the divine spark asleep inside the body. And they said that Jesus, the emissary of light, came to restore this forgotten vision. When he spoke of those who have eyes but do not see, he was referring to the pineal, the dormant eye of the soul. His mission was to awaken it, to reopen the path between humanity and the realm of light. Now imagine, if this sacred organ is truly the interface between body and spirit, what happens when it begins to awaken? What visions return? What memories surface? What realities become visible once more? Throughout this video, we'll explore how this inner eye works, what ancient and modern discoveries reveal about its hidden powers, and why powerful institutions, from organized religion to modern science, have had every reason to keep it closed. Because when humanity remembers how to see with the eye of the soul, no system of control can blind it again. So let me ask you, have you ever felt that moment of stillness when you close your eyes and something beyond yourself begins to look back? That subtle awareness, that presence watching from within, could it be your own awakened sight trying to return? Leave your thoughts in the comments and stay with me, because in the next revelation, we'll uncover how the pineal gland works as the door between the worlds of spirit and matter, and what the ancients really meant by opening the third eye. Deep inside your brain, protected by bone and shadow, lies a tiny crystal, a gland no larger than a grain of rice. For centuries, philosophers and mystics have claimed that within this small structure lies the most powerful technology in existence, a biological stargate capable of translating spiritual light into human perception. Science calls it the pineal gland, but the ancients saw it as something far greater, a living bridge between the finite and the infinite. Modern neuroscience knows that the pineal gland regulates sleep cycles through the secretion of melatonin, a hormone that controls circadian rhythms. Yet beneath that simple biological function hides a deeper mystery. The gland is covered in photoreceptor cells, similar to those found in the retina, suggesting that, in some forgotten age, it may have been a literal eye designed to perceive light not of this world. Ancient mystics believed that the pineal gland operates as an interdimensional antenna, sensitive to the subtler vibrations of consciousness. When active, it produces inner visions, lucid dreams, and out-of-body experiences, phenomena that ancient initiates described as soul travel. Some modern researchers have even suggested that under certain conditions, the pineal secretes DMT, dimethyltryptamine, a naturally occurring molecule capable of opening the mind to higher realities. The same molecule responsible for the visionary experiences reported in shamanic rituals across the planet. But the Gnostics went further. They taught that the pineal gland is not only a doorway to other realms, it is the gate out of the prison built by the demiurge. The moment it awakens, the soul begins to remember its origin beyond matter. Through that inner eye, one can perceive what the archons have hidden, the shimmering network of divine light connecting all beings. This, they said, is why the world's powers sought to dull it. Because when humans can see beyond illusion, they can no longer be controlled. The early Gnostic texts describe the soul's journey through the spheres, realms ruled by the archons, each guarding the passage to the higher light. A soul that awakens its inner eye can see the false realities for what they are, dissolving the illusions one by one. The pineal becomes the compass that guides consciousness through these barriers, until it reaches the true source, the pleroma. Modern science, in its own way, has begun to confirm fragments of this ancient knowledge. Studies show that the pineal gland contains calcite microcrystals that vibrate in response to electromagnetic fields, acting almost like a biological quartz crystal. Some physicists speculate that these crystals could interact with subtle frequencies of light or consciousness, allowing perception beyond the ordinary senses. If that's true, then the ancients weren't imagining a symbol. They were describing a mechanism, one capable of tuning the human body to the higher frequencies of reality. Now imagine what happens when that system is corrupted. Over time, the pineal gland hardens. A process called calcification caused by toxins, stress, fluoride, and the absence of sunlight. The crystalline structure loses its sensitivity, and with it, our capacity for deep intuition, connection, and transcendence. It's as if the eye that once saw the divine has gone blind. Some Gnostics believed this was no accident. They said the archons, the rulers of the material realm, influenced humanity to build a world that numbs the pineal gland, artificial light that confuses natural cycles, fear that distorts perception, noise that drowns inner silence, and substances that dull awareness. In their myth, this was part of the great deception, to keep the soul looking outward, never inward. But the light cannot be extinguished. It only sleeps. The same gland that hardens through ignorance can awaken through knowledge, intention, and purification. It responds to truth the way a flower responds to the sun. It opens. And when it opens, the boundaries between the seen and unseen begin to blur. The world starts to shimmer with hidden life. Dreams become more vivid, intuition sharpens, and the sense of isolation fades. The awakened pineal restores the original connection between humanity and the divine cosmos. So when the ancients called it the door between worlds, they weren't speaking in metaphor. They meant it literally. It is the point where spirit meets matter, where the inner and outer worlds converge. And if that door can open within us again, then perhaps heaven and earth were never truly separate, only unseen. Have you ever felt that flicker, that moment in meditation, in nature, or in the edge of sleep, when another reality seems to press against this one? When something inside you says, "You've been here before?" That is the doorway calling. In the next revelation, we'll explore who closed that door and why the knowledge of the pineal gland's true purpose was systematically erased from history. Because understanding how it works is only half the mystery. The other half is knowing who wanted it hidden. If the pineal gland is truly the door between worlds, the biological bridge that allows the human soul to perceive beyond matter, then it becomes clear why, across history, those who sought control over humankind would do anything to keep it closed. Because a population that can see cannot be ruled by fear. The suppression of this knowledge began quietly, not through science, but through religion. In the early centuries after Christ, multiple schools of spiritual thought flourished. The Gnostics, the Hermeticists, and the mystery schools of Egypt and Greece all taught that the divine could be found within. The temple was the human body. The path to God led inward, through the awakening of consciousness, what they called gnosis, the direct knowledge of the divine. But as Christianity became the official religion of empire, a new message replaced the old. The inner path was declared dangerous. The mystical union between man and God was reserved for priests and saints. The body, once seen as the vessel of the divine spark, became something to distrust, even despise. Salvation no longer came from inner awakening, but from external authority. The pineal gland, the third eye of the ancients, symbolized this forbidden knowledge. Its image, the pine cone, appears throughout early Christian art, often in the hands of angels or adorning papal staffs. Over time, it transformed into a mere ornament, stripped of its meaning. The same institution that built cathedrals filled with solar symbols and sacred geometry began to condemn those who spoke of light within as heretics. Why? Because a person who realizes that God lives inside cannot be enslaved by guilt or fear. They do not need an intermediary to touch the divine. And that idea, that the divine spark resides in everyone, was revolutionary. When the Gnostic texts resurfaced in Nag Hammadi in 1945, they revealed how early Christians like the Gospel of Thomas recorded Jesus saying, "The kingdom is inside you and outside you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will be known." That single line was enough to destroy the hierarchy built upon spiritual dependency. And so, centuries earlier, it had been buried. But the suppression didn't end with religion. When science rose to power, it continued the same erasure, this time under a new disguise. The 17th century philosopher René Descartes, often called the father of modern thought, wrote that the pineal gland was the seat of the soul. Yet, after his death, materialism took over. The soul was declared a myth. Consciousness became a byproduct of chemistry. The inner worlds of spirit were replaced by the cold certainty of matter. Over time, the human being, once seen as a bridge between heaven and earth, became a biological machine. The pineal gland was reduced to a regulator of sleep, its mystery dismissed. And so, the ancient door between worlds was closed, not by force, but by disbelief. Meanwhile, other systems of control rose to maintain the blindness. Industrialization, artificial lighting, and chemical toxins all contributed to the physical calcification of the pineal gland. The modern diet, filled with fluoride and heavy metals, slowly hardened its crystalline structure. Whether intentional or not, the effect was the same. The third eye dimmed. Humanity became cut off from its natural state of inner clarity. The Gnostics would say this is exactly what the Archons desired, for humanity to forget its divine origin and live trapped in the lower frequencies of fear, competition, and confusion. Because a soul disconnected from its inner vision is easy to manipulate. It follows the outer light, the false light of control, mistaking it for truth. Yet even within this darkness, fragments of the old knowledge survived. Hidden in symbols, myths, and art, the pine cone, the mark of the third eye, appeared again and again on Sumerian reliefs where gods held it toward the tree of life, on the staff of the Pope, on the crowns of Buddha statues. The secret was never fully erased, only obscured, waiting for those with eyes to see. Today, as the world moves through another age of awakening, this knowledge is returning. Science, mysticism, and consciousness research are converging once again. What religion silenced and materialism mocked, human experience is rediscovering. The door is reopening. And perhaps that is why so many feel restless now, why dreams are more vivid, intuition sharper, the sense of unseen realities stronger. The pineal gland, dormant for centuries, is stirring in humanity's collective body. It wants to remember. But the question remains, how can it be reawakened fully? If the door was closed through fear, deception, and material obsession, can it be reopened through intention, purity, and truth? In the next revelation, we'll uncover the ancient techniques and sacred disciplines once used to activate the pineal gland, the very methods suppressed by religion and rediscovered by modern seekers. Because awakening is not a theory, it is a practice, and that practice begins with remembering who you truly are. The ancients believed that the divine was not distant. It was dormant, hidden within the body itself. They saw the human being as a sacred instrument, the spine as a staff of light, the heart as an altar, and the pineal gland as the lamp of the soul. To awaken it was to turn that lamp back on, to let its inner radiance pierce the veil of illusion. Across civilizations, the path to this awakening was taught through secret initiation. The Egyptians trained for years in the temples of Dendra and Luxor. The priests practiced deep breath work, silence, and ritual fasting beneath chambers aligned with the stars. They believed that by purifying the body and calming the mind, the inner eye, the eye of Ra, would open and reveal the divine light that sustains the universe. In India, the yogis spoke of the Ajna chakra, the energy center between the eyebrows, linked directly to the pineal gland. Their practice was to focus the gaze gently inward and upward, synchronizing breath and attention until the duality of the world dissolved into a single point of luminous awareness. In that state, they said, one could see the universe as it truly is, not a collection of separate things, but a single ocean of consciousness vibrating through every form. The Greeks, too, preserved this knowledge. In the schools of Pythagoras and Plato, initiates were taught that the soul journeys through cycles of forgetfulness and remembrance. The pineal gland, they said, was the key to anamnesis, divine recollection. To remember one's origin was to awaken the inner vision. Even the early Gnostics practiced similar methods. The Book of the Great Invisible Spirit describes a sacred breath, a prayer without words, that raises the inner light through the body's hidden centers, until it reaches the crown. They called this movement the ascent through the eons, where the soul passes beyond the realms of the archons and returns to the Father of Light. Each step of the ascent corresponded to an activation within the body, culminating in the awakening of the pineal, the eye of the heart. But this activation was never about physical sensation or spectacle. It was about remembrance, a deep inner stillness in which the illusions of the demiurge could no longer deceive the soul. The Gnostics believed that when the pineal opened, the false light of this world was revealed as shadow, and the true light, invisible to the outer eye, became visible again. Over time, these sacred practices faded into fragments. Breathing exercises turned into mere relaxation techniques. Meditation became a mental habit, stripped of its sacred aim. The modern world teaches people to calm their stress, not to awaken their divine sight. Yet the path has never been lost, only forgotten. To the ancients, awakening the pineal gland required 3 sacred disciplines: purity, silence, and light. Purity meant clearing the vessel, fasting, cleansing, and aligning one's life with truth. The pineal gland is crystalline by nature, and just as a crystal clouded by dust cannot refract light, a consciousness clouded by falsehood cannot reflect the divine. Silence was the key to stillness. In the stillness of thought, the pineal gland vibrates naturally. Ancient mystics spoke of a soft hum, a soundless sound that begins in deep meditation. It is the frequency of the door itself unlocking, and light was the nourishment of the soul. The Egyptians stood beneath the morning sun, eyes closed, allowing the first rays to touch the center of the forehead, feeding the pineal directly with the frequencies of the cosmos. The early Christians, before the dogmas hardened, prayed facing the sunrise, whispering the words of the Lord's Prayer, not to the God of the world, but to the Father of Light. Even today, remnants of these practices can be found. Controlled breathing, deep meditation, fasting, and exposure to natural sunlight all stimulate pineal function. Modern researchers have observed that when the mind enters deep stillness, the gland begins to produce serotonin and melatonin in patterns that can induce visionary states. It is as if the body itself remembers the path back to the divine. But the most important element is intention. The pineal gland is not merely biological. It responds to the language of the soul. When your prayer becomes a remembrance rather than a request, when your silence becomes listening instead of escape, the door begins to move. The ancients said that awakening the pineal was like watching the dawn from within yourself. The light rises slowly, not from the horizon, but from your own center. At first, you see flickers, intuition, synchronicity, glimpses of something greater. Then, one day, the sun rises fully inside you. The world shines with a brilliance it never had before, because the world itself has changed, or rather, you have remembered how to see. And perhaps this is why the powers of the world fear such awakening. Because a human being who has opened their inner eye cannot be enslaved, not by fear, not by systems, not by illusion. So ask yourself, what would happen if millions of people awakened their inner sight again? If humanity remembered its divine connection? In the next revelation, we'll uncover what happens when this door opens, the signs, experiences, and transformations that occur when the pineal gland reactivates. Because awakening is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of a new kind of vision. When the pineal gland begins to awaken, it does not roar like thunder or blind the eyes with sudden light. It begins as a whisper, a faint vibration, a pulse behind the forehead, a sense that something ancient within you is stirring after centuries of silence. It is the inner sun rising for the first time in a long, long night. The Gnostics described this as the remembrance of light. They said that when the soul starts to remember its divine origin, reality itself begins to shift. The illusions of the world, the chains of matter, the noise of the archons lose their hold. What once appeared solid begins to shimmer. What once felt meaningless becomes infused with presence. You begin to perceive not only through the eyes of flesh, but through the eye of spirit. At first, it feels like intuition becoming stronger, knowing things without logic, sensing emotions before words, feeling guided without explanation. Then dreams change. They become more vivid, more coherent, as if another intelligence is speaking through them. The boundary between sleep and waking softens, and moments of synchronicity multiply. Numbers repeat, symbols appear, coincidences form a pattern too precise to ignore. This is not imagination. It is the return of perception that was once natural to humanity. The ancients said that before the fall into forgetfulness, humans lived in constant communion with the higher realms. The pineal gland was their antenna to the pleroma, the fullness of divine consciousness. Through it, they received inspiration, guidance, and direct knowing. The loss of that connection, what the Gnostics called the Great Sleep, was the beginning of spiritual exile. When the gland reactivates, that exile ends. The inner and outer worlds begin to merge again. Some describe this awakening as a brilliant flash of light during meditation. Others as a deep stillness in which everything, even suffering, becomes luminous. There is no single path, for the awakening mirrors the soul that experiences it. But one truth remains. The more the inner eye opens, the less power the outer world has. Fear loses its grip because you can see through it. The manipulation of the archons, through media, systems, and the noise of endless distraction, becomes transparent. You see the threads behind the theater of existence, and what once seemed chaotic now reveals a hidden harmony. This is why the Gnostics warned that awakening is both liberation and trial. The first thing the awakened eye sees is not paradise, but illusion. It sees how the world has been constructed to keep humanity asleep, how even our desires and fears are part of the mechanism. The truth can be overwhelming at first, like stepping out of a dark cave into sunlight. The light burns, but it also heals. In the Pistis Sophia, one of the great Gnostic texts, the soul cries out as she rises through the realms of the archons, blinded by their false lights. But each cry becomes a prayer that lifts her higher, until she reaches the realm of pure radiance and remembers who she truly is. The pineal awakening follows the same path through confusion, cleansing, and finally illumination. Modern seekers describe it as a reorientation of perception. The brain begins to generate new rhythms. Alpha and theta waves dominate, bringing deep calm and expanded awareness. The body feels lighter, as if energy is flowing freely for the first time. Some report hearing an inner ringing. Others see light patterns when eyes are closed. But these are only outer reflections of an inner process. Consciousness remembering its own infinity. Yet the awakening is not meant for isolation or superiority. The true purpose is integration. The awakened soul returns to the world not to escape it, but to illuminate it. The pineal gland is not a portal for fleeing reality, but for transforming it. Once open, the door allows divine intelligence to flow into daily life, into speech, thought, creativity, and love. Every act becomes sacred again, because every act is now guided by the light within. The ancients said, when this inner sun rises fully, one no longer sees things, one sees essence. The eyes of the flesh see separation. The eye of the spirit sees unity. It is as if the universe looks back through you. And perhaps this is what Jesus meant when he said, "If your eye be single, your whole body will be full of light." The single eye, the third eye, fills the being with radiance, because it reconnects the fragment to the whole. The world no longer appears as a battlefield between good and evil, but as a divine drama in which light learns to recognize itself through shadow. This is the true awakening, not escaping the material world, but redeeming it through perception. When enough eyes open, the illusion of separation dissolves, and the door between worlds becomes a bridge. Heaven descends into earth not through apocalypse, but through remembrance. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt that sudden clarity? That moment when everything makes sense, and you can almost see energy moving around you? That is your inner eye blinking awake. In the next revelation, we'll explore the hidden battle that follows awakening, how the archons react when a soul begins to see through their illusion, and how to protect the inner light once the door between worlds is opened. Every awakening triggers a reaction. The moment a soul begins to see through illusion, the forces that depend on illusion begin to move. The Gnostics called them archons, the rulers of the lower realms, invisible governors of fear, imitation, and distraction. Their empire is not built on armies or weapons, but on attention. Wherever the human gaze is trapped, there they feed. When the pineal gland stirs, when the inner eye begins to remember, the archons feel it. It is like a vibration that disturbs their machinery, a signal that one of the captives is slipping free. And so they respond, not with thunderbolts or curses, but with whispers, thoughts that say, "This isn't real. You're imagining things. Go back to sleep." In the ancient texts, this moment is described as the trial of the watchers. The soul, newly awakened, finds the world suddenly louder, heavier, and stranger. People who once felt kind may react with sudden hostility. Old fears resurface. Doubt creeps in. The archons use whatever tools they can. Emotional turbulence, temptation, fatigue, distraction. They will flood the mind with noise until the new light flickers. It is not punishment. It is maintenance. Their goal is simple: to restore the blindness that feeds their dominion, because the awakened human is dangerous. When you can see through fear, propaganda, and false authority, you become unpredictable. You cannot be programmed. In modern language, this counterattack manifests as the ego's resistance. The ego, shaped by the archon's world, fears dissolution. It thrives on identity, comparison, and control. When the pineal opens and the boundaries of the self begin to dissolve into unity, the ego panics. It clings to habits, judgments, addictions, anything to restore the familiar cage. That is why, after moments of spiritual elevation, many people experience sudden confusion or sadness. The old self is fighting to survive. The Gnostics saw this as the final temptation of Christ in the desert. After his baptism, his symbolic awakening, he was tempted by the ruler of this world. The offer was always the same: return to power, comfort, recognition. Worship me, and the struggle will end. But Jesus refused, choosing instead the narrow path of remembrance. In that story lies a map for every awakening soul. So what can you do when the counterattack begins? The same thing the masters did: hold still, witness, and remember. The archons feed on reaction. They cannot stand presence. When you observe fear without surrendering to it, when you watch thoughts pass like clouds, their web dissolves. The pineal gland, sustained by attention and breath, steadies again. The door remains open. Silence is your shield. Gratitude is your sword. Awareness is your armor. These are not poetic metaphors. They are frequencies that the archons cannot inhabit. Every time you respond with awareness instead of panic, they lose access to your field. Many mystics describe a second phase of awakening after this trial. The visions deepen, but they no longer intoxicate. They clarify. The mind quiets, yet the senses sharpen. The person functions in the world, works, loves, creates, but behind every action flows a quiet certainty. I am not of this world, though I walk within it. The pineal gland, once a forgotten crystal, now vibrates steadily with the rhythm of the cosmos. The soul begins to dream consciously, to perceive guidance in coincidences, to feel unity pulsing through separation. The archons do not vanish, but their influence becomes transparent. You see their patterns in society, the endless loops of fear, greed, and distraction, yet they no longer bind you. You become, in Gnostic terms, a living eon, a being of light operating in the world of matter. And here lies the paradox. The more you awaken, the more compassion you feel, because you realize that even the archons are part of the divine story, distorted echoes of light, blind children of Sophia, playing their role in the drama of remembrance. Their resistance, though painful, refines the soul. Without shadow, light would not know itself. When you reach that understanding, fear dissolves entirely. The battle ends not in victory or defeat, but in transcendence. The pineal gland remains open, yet grounded. You live with both eyes, one in the world of form, one in the world of spirit. And that is the state the ancients called illumination. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt that after a moment of deep insight, the world seems to test you immediately? That your peace is challenged? Your clarity shaken? That is the counterattack. But if you can remain aware through it, you will find that on the other side of the trial lies something extraordinary, freedom that cannot be taken away. In the final revelation, we will bring everything together, the history, the science, and the spirit, to uncover the ultimate purpose of the pineal gland, not just to see other worlds, but to unify them within yourself. The door has opened. You have seen how the pineal gland, that small crystal of light buried within your brain, is more than biology. It is the bridge between matter and spirit, the compass of the soul, the whisper of the divine within flesh. But the awakening of this door is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of an entirely new kind of existence. When the inner eye opens, heaven does not appear somewhere else. It begins to bloom inside the world you already know. The Gnostics called this syzygy the sacred union of opposites, heaven and earth, spirit and matter, light and shadow. They believed that the final purpose of the pineal gland was not escape, but reconciliation, to fuse the two realities until there is no separation between them. For ages, humanity has lived divided between the seen and the unseen, faith and science, body and soul. The demiurge's greatest trick was not only to blind the eye, but to convince us that spirit and matter were enemies. Once the pineal awakens, that lie collapses. You begin to see that every atom is luminous, that divinity lives even in the smallest grain of dust. The world stops being a prison and becomes a mirror. In that moment, something profound occurs. You no longer seek God. You begin to embody God, not in arrogance, but in remembrance. The divine spark that once felt distant now pulses in your veins. Each breath becomes prayer, each heartbeat a drum, echoing across the dimensions. You realize that the door between worlds is not a place, it is a state of being. When Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," he was not speaking metaphorically. He was describing this state, the union of the higher and lower worlds through awakened consciousness. The pineal gland, once dormant, becomes the axis of that union, the still point around which all opposites revolve. The serpent of energy that lay coiled at the base of the spine rises like fire and meets the light descending from above. When they merge, heaven and earth kiss inside you. In that union, duality dissolves. You are no longer a soul trapped in a body. You are spirit experiencing itself through form. Pain becomes wisdom. Desire becomes movement. Death becomes transformation. You begin to live as what the ancient teachers called a twice-born being, alive in both realms at once. From that moment on, every act carries light. The way you speak, eat, love, and walk becomes prayer. The ordinary world reveals its extraordinary layers. The morning sunlight seems to remember you. Time slows because you are no longer racing through illusion. You are moving with the rhythm of eternity. And yet, the task is not to remain in ecstasy, but to share it. The true initiate returns to the world. He carries the fire into the city, into families, into art, into compassion. The Gnostics said that one awakened soul radiates enough light to guide 1,000 others. The pineal gland, once a personal portal, becomes a collective beacon. Humanity evolves one remembrance at a time. This, then, is the hidden purpose of the pineal gland, not just to see, but to become the seeing itself. Not to escape the world, but to illuminate it from within. Look again at the symbol of the pine cone carved on temples and cathedrals. It is the seed that holds a spiral, the pattern of creation itself. Every seed carries a whole tree within it, just as every human carries the universe within. When the inner eye opens, that seed bursts. You realize that creation is not finished. It continues through you. And so, the great work of the soul is not to fight darkness endlessly, but to transform it into understanding. to forgive even the archons, knowing they too are sparks playing their role in the vast symphony of awakening. The pineal gland does not judge, it reveals. It allows light to see itself in the mirror of shadow, and through that recognition, the cosmos heals. If you've listened this far, it means some part of you already feels it, that quiet call to remember, to awaken, to live from the center of the light. That call is not mine, it is yours. It is the voice of the same source that breathed stars into being, now whispering through the small crystal between your hemispheres. It is time. So before you leave this revelation, take a moment, close your eyes, inhale deeply. Feel that gentle warmth behind your forehead. Not imagination, but memory. The door is already open. You are already home. If this journey has stirred something in you, if you felt truth resonate beneath the words, share it below. Tell us what you remembered tonight. When you comment, when you subscribe, when you share, you help others find this same light. And together, we rebuild the network of awakened souls across the world. Because this is not just a video. It is a signal, a call from the forgotten temple within every human heart. And now, as the ancients said when the initiation ended and the light returned, may your eye remain single, your body full of light, and your soul free forever from the shadows of forgetfulness.